From the personal journal entries of Chris Parker. March 14th, 2013. Today I arrived at Lake Worth. It was afternoon and I decided to buy enough groceries to last me the weekend. After that, I went straight for Road 116 where Dan told me the little summer house his parents owned was. He said it was the last house down on the road, somewhat into the forest, and that it would be perfect for my needs, which were to isolate myself from society and gain some sort of inspiration from nature. I drove down 116 and past a few houses, until there was a big gap of just trees and forest vegetation. I passed a big wooden fence where the paved road transformed into a dirt road that went through a big semi-open metal gate. I got out of the car and pushed the gate open. Then I kept driving for a few more minutes. Finally, a 2-story wooden house appeared. Dan told me it would be the last house down the road, and indeed, the road ended just there, leaving just a narrow path into the forest that no car could enter. The house was surrounded by a wooden fence and a big red gate. The gate was not locked, so I opened it and parked my car in the front yard of the house. There was a trail of recently dried out creek that seemed to have flowed right under the gate and into the forest. Perhaps it formed when the ground was flooded in the rainy season. Since Dan's parents didn't know I was about to borrow their summer house for a month, he didn't give me a key. But he told me they hid a key under a porch, in a small gap between the deck boards. Well, I didn't find the key. There were lots of gaps in the deck and I tried to look in the obvious ones, but it wasn't there. Then I tried just opening the door, and it was unlocked. I did find a spare key above the door frame inside the house, so there's that. The place was very nice and cozy, although a bit dusty. I unpacked everything and settled in. Now, since at this point it was already getting pretty dark, I decided to just chill in front of the fireplace and relax with a book. March 15th. This place is great. It already has pretty much everything a person needs for some time to live in seclusion. I found an old, but in working order, record player and a bunch of records. There's an old TV here that has an old RCA connection, so I can't really use it with my HDMI laptop output. The bed is comfortable and I love the relaxing sounds of the fireplace. I took an hour-long walk today in the forest and decided I would go camping sometime next week. I was supposed to go back to the town today, but when I checked back for my little forest hike, I felt a huge burst of inspiration. I had tons of canvases and oil paints stashed away in the car, so I put them to good use and spent the rest of the day painting. Even better, there's no cell reception here. In fact, I was thinking of just leaving my cell phone somewhere just to get disconnected, so there's no need to do that now. I would just have to buy DVDs or download movies I want to my laptop when I'm connected to the network in town, so I could watch them offline later when I'm home. There's a landline phone that I could use if I need, and well, that'll be enough for me. March 16th. In the morning I went to town to get some supplies I was missing and also picked up an HDMI to RCA connector for the TV. It worked pretty well, but I got a weak signal of some satellite TV channel that overlapped with my laptop's input. Anyway, I could only notice it when everything else was completely quiet. I've spent the rest of the day painting, and in the evening, I went to a local bar to have a beer and eat something, to try to mingle a bit with the locals. On my first day in town, I saw a few cute girls walking around, and I thought I might see them again if I go out. At that bar, The Claw, I met a nice local guy named Dennis. We drank a couple of beers and talked about the town and our lives. I found out he ran the grocery store where I previously bought food for the weekend. Apparently, he inherited the business from his father that passed away some 6 months ago. I'm sorry to hear that, since he seemed like a really nice guy. Later on, I caught a glance from a cute blonde girl. She looked at me for a second and then turned away. She acted a bit weird after that. A parking car's headlights shone through the big window behind her, and she looked a couple of feet to the left of me and seemed somewhat confused. Then a friend of hers shouted something and the whole group she was with started laughing. The girl joined them and seemed to have forgotten about me. Anyway, Dennis and I switched numbers and decided to meet again soon. March 17th. Today I started planning out my upcoming camping trip. I didn't bring any camping supplies like a tent or a sleeping bag, so I had to buy or borrow them from someone. So I called Dennis to check with him. He got worried for a moment, told me not to go too deep into the woods. He told me there was a really bad place in the forest that everyone in town keeps away from. I'm not sure if he's trying to prank me or what. When I tried to question him further, he was extremely reluctant to talk about it. Eventually, he just made me promise that I won't go camping until we meet in a couple of days, when he'd tell me all about it. March 19th. I'm not sure how seriously I should take what Dennis told me today, but I decided not to go on with my camping plan anyway. We ate and chatted for a while, and then he told me about his father. He told me that his father really didn't die in natural circumstances. I wasn't sure at first if it was some weird sense of humor he had, but when he kept talking, I figured that he really believed what he was saying. He told me that his father was haunted, or more exactly, stalked by a strange being. Him and his father's friend didn't know what it was, and tried helping him to get rid of the thing, with the help of exorcists and whatnot, but nothing helped. His father then left to live in an old hunting shack that their family owned deep inside the forest, where he lived his remaining years until he died, which was not long ago. Then Dennis told me that after he had died, they left the place and put up a huge warning sign so that nobody could miss if they stumbled upon it. I told him that I'm skeptical about his story, that I'm an atheist and I don't believe in ghosts and supernatural beings. Dennis accepted that, but asked me, actually he almost begged me, not to enter or even go near this place in case I do go on a hike in the forest. I asked him what would happen to me, but he didn't want to talk about it anymore. He just told me to stay away from this place and to not even get close to the cabin itself. Whatever you do, don't let the shadow of the building touch you, he said. I'm confused. I don't believe stuff like that, but I'm convinced Dennis was serious about everything he had said. Anyway, tomorrow I'll take a short hike into the forest and look for the cabin. Dennis did spook me a bit, so if I find it, I'll just stay away. I'll also take a pair of binoculars to get a closer look at the place. March 20th. I'm a bit creeped out right now. You see, after I ate breakfast, I proceeded on my planned hike into the forest. Since yesterday, I got really curious about what supposedly lurked in those woods. Just after I left the house, I noticed there was a nail in the gate, but nothing was attached to it, so I figured there was once a house number that was lost to the weather. I walked along the dirt road into the woods, noticing the trail of dried out creek I saw when I first arrived here a week ago. And I wondered how far this stream of water went, so I stepped off the pathway and went after the trail of dried water. After not more than 100 yards, hidden in the bushes, I saw something that sent shivers up my spine. It was a large sign that had probably fallen from the gate of my house and flowed down the stream. The sign read, "Do not enter this property. Keep a distance of at least 30 feet at all times." For a moment, I was genuinely frightened. I wasn't sure what to do, but then I calmed myself down and realized that nothing has happened to me since I arrived here, so all of this was probably just a story after all. I walked around the house to see if there was something scary about it that I should have noticed, but there was nothing. It was the same cozy little place I grew to like in the past few days. Since my mood was still a bit spooked out, I gave up on my little hike for a while. I also don't really want to talk to Dennis because he'll probably get all crazy and stuff. March 22nd. Oh my God. Am I losing it? After what happened this morning, I ran away from that damn house as far as I could. I couldn't think straight for the past few hours. I'm not even sure if I'm awake or dreaming. I just talked to Dennis again, and I can't believe he was right all along. All right, I gotta get my thoughts straight. What I saw today, I don't want to think about, but I have to give an account of everything that took place. Jesus, my eyes are tearing up just thinking about this. When I woke up this morning, I looked at the wall in front of my bed. My room, the bedroom in that damned house, is actually the whole second floor of the place. There was a desk across the room with a rotating office chair. When I woke up, I laid in bed for a few moments. The sun was still low enough to shine through the window and illuminate the wall on the other side of the room. And then I saw it. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. On the illuminated part of the wall, I saw the shadow of a person sitting in the office chair, facing my way, staring at me. I'm not sure if I screamed or not, but in the next moment, I was on my legs out of the bed. But then I looked at the chair and there was nothing there. The chair was facing me because, well, that's how I left it after I finished sitting in it last night. For a moment, I thought I just imagined everything, but then I looked at the shadow again. It was still there, a shadow of a person just sitting in the chair and facing me. Now, I don't remember much of what happened after that. I was so terrified I couldn't think. I think that for a moment I wanted to jump out of the window, but I obviously didn't. Or at least, I think I didn't. In a few moments, I was in the car driving like crazy. Somehow, I got to the town. First thing I did was finding a phone booth and calling Dennis. He flipped when I told him that not only did I touch the shadow of the house, but I actually lived in it for a week. And of course, just as I needed him most, he was out of town. He told me to get a motel room, preferably a small one, and buy a flashlight with enough batteries to change many times, and a laser pointer. I stopped at a nearby shop and bought like a dozen flashlights and laser pointers, and I don't know how many packs of batteries. I think I now understand why I need them. I need something that could produce enough light for something to cast a shadow, for that thing to cast a shadow. But I'm too damn afraid. I don't want to see it again. That thing that was just calmly staring at me. I can't stay in this motel room right now. I have to go outside, but I don't know where. March 22nd. I don't think I'll be able to sleep tonight. That thing's stalking me constantly. I tried experimenting with it today. First off, I noticed that the shadow is of a person that is always at the same distance from me. Whenever I move, that thing disappears. And when I look for it again with the laser pointer or flashlight, it stands in a different direction so that there are no obstacles that would prevent it from being at its usual distance of about 20 to 30 feet. When I'm in a small room that doesn't contain such lengths, it waits outside, still at the same distance. Of course, I tried throwing shit at it, but things just went right through like there was nothing there at all. I'm starting to wonder whether I could get used to it and just live the rest of my life with a silent companion. I can't believe I got myself into this. God damn it, Dan. Couldn't you just give me normal directions to a normal house? March 23rd. This was one of the worst nights of my life. I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. I kept imagining the worst possible things that could happen, and possible explanations for this nightmare. Needless to say, I couldn't sleep. I frantically searched the web for any information I could find about this thing, but came up with nothing. And I wonder if I'm just hallucinating everything. March 23rd. Later that night. I just pointed the laser out of my motel room window for like 5 minutes and tried to find the thing, but I couldn't see anything. Nothing blocked the little red dot. I hope it just decided to go haunt someone else, but I didn't really believe so. So I exited the room and pointed it down the exterior corridor of the motel. And there it was. Some distance away, the laser pointer was blocked. And I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but it seemed a bit closer than yesterday. I pointed it at the floor, and that way I could see exactly where it disappeared. I moved it a bit right. The dot appeared again, and when I kept moving it, it was blocked again. 2 legs. It was standing right at that spot. I took my breath and moved 2 steps towards it. The thing disappeared. I counted my steps and estimated the stalking distance of the thing to be about 26 feet from me now. It was even closer than I thought. And then it struck me. The thing is getting closer to me by the minute, and it was getting closer ever since I arrived at that damned house, and I was just naively painting and wasting precious time. What am I going to do? I got a long measuring tape from the hardware store and decided to confirm my suspicion. I located the spot where the feet of the shadow began, and I remembered this spot and then measured the distance between where I was standing at the time to the spot. It turned out to be 26 feet 2 inches. I'm going to check that again this evening and calculate the speed at which it was getting closer. Okay, I'm seriously fucked. I checked the distance again. It got closer by approximately 1.5 inches. If the thing creeps towards me at a constant rate, it means it gains about 3 inches a day. Tomorrow I'm going to meet with Dennis and get some damn answers. At least I hope so. March 24th. I met with Dennis. The first thing he did was take the laser pointer I had on me. And it wasn't long before he located the stalker. He told me it was the same thing that haunted his father. He said that his father never found a way to get rid of it, but he did find a way to make life more manageable. He also told me that this thing moves in on me at the rate of about 1 inch a day. At this point, I had already established that it was going at me 3 inches a day, and I was not happy to break him the news. I asked him what this thing was and where it came from, but he didn't know. He was really sorry and told me he tried to warn me. Needless to say, I questioned him a lot, but he didn't know much, or at least he answered very vaguely. He told me that he could not exactly tell how his father stopped the thing, but there was someone who could help me. We sat down in a diner. We ordered food, but I couldn't touch it. I couldn't see the shadow at that time, but I knew it was out there. He asked me what I think this thing could be. I have no idea, but I did start speculating. I told him at first I didn't think it was a ghost. First of all, I don't believe in the supernatural. Secondly, he sees it too, and from what he's told me, anyone else could see the stalking shadow too if they were looking. Now, I entertained the idea it was a person in some top-secret invisibility suit, but it didn't make any sense, and besides, I already tried throwing stuff at it. Maybe it was an alien, I suggested. Dennis didn't answer, but then he told me more about his friend of his father's. His name was Brian, and while he didn't tell Dennis much, he seemed to know a bit more about the thing. He said that he will contact him and that he believes that Brian will try to help me as much as he can. Now I'm back at the motel room. I've already drank pretty much every tiny booze bottle I could find in the little fridge. I'm not even sure this could help me sleep. I don't have enough courage to look out the window with a flashlight. March 30th. The last week was the worst week of my life, if you could even call it life. My existence has become a pure torment. I couldn't shut an eye for the first 2 nights, but then tiredness, with enough alcohol, got the best of me, and I slept a bit most nights. My dreams were filled with nightmares. I constantly drifted in and out of sleep and dreamt the shadow was getting closer and closer to me. Sometimes I would wake up and I could swear I could see the thing sitting and staring at me. And then I would realize I imagined or dreamt it. I became obsessed with checking the thing's location every day. Last night, I filled up with enough courage to look for the thing with a flashlight at nighttime. And while the laser pointer was just a red dot that was blocked when I pointed it at it, the flashlight showed a whole shadow. The moment I saw it, I wanted to scream. I was totally traumatized from that morning I woke up in the forest house, and instead of the trauma healing, things only got worse and worse. I could feel the thing was creeping closer all the time. When I walked around town to meet with Dennis or just to get food, I constantly checked my surroundings with the laser pointer. I was obsessed. I'm now constantly fearing this thing to suddenly jump at me, suddenly start to move faster. And every single time I search for it with the laser pointer, I'm expecting it to be right behind me. I could sometimes feel the hairs on the back of my neck stiffen, but when I look for the thing with my laser pointer, and by now I got really good in locating it within seconds, it's still pretty far away from me, about the same distance it was from before, just a tiny bit closer. Now I started feeling like my time is getting shorter and shorter. What was coming for me seemed to be worse than death. And I can't imagine what happens when this thing comes for me, and I can't say the thought of putting an end to this pathetic excuse for life hasn't crossed my mind. And so far, there's no silver lining. Although I'm meeting with Dennis every day, he can't really help me other than offering me his mental support. But he did not agree to come sleep with me even once. He's too terrified of that thing. I can't blame him. And Brian, that damn old bastard, well, he didn't contact me. Neither Dennis since he first called him. Dennis told me that Brian had to check on some things before he could help, and did not hear from him since. April 4th. 23 feet. A bit less even. Now at this point I've always carried a bag with batteries, a measuring tape, and of course my flashlight and laser pointer, but today, finally something less bad has happened. Brian contacted me. Actually, he knocked on my door. He arrived at town without warning. Dennis had told me to stay put, so I waited and waited until that day came, and he explained to me everything he knew. He told me that Dennis's father, Stephen was his name, and him served together at Area 51. Back in 1974, the military had brought in something unidentified. They were positive it was not man-made, and Brian said that the analysis of the materials it was made of could not match it to any material found on Earth. In fact, they couldn't even find any resemblance to any known material. Stephen was an officer that served there. He was leading a team that was ordered to slice the object open. Him and 5 more soldiers worked on it. When the object finally broke, something had happened to them. All of them were cursed. Each of the 5 soldiers acquired a stalker of his own, each moving in his own pace and going after them. One of the less fortunate soldiers had an especially quick stalker. Poor bastard couldn't handle it, and he eventually put a gun to his head. But that's how they found out about them. No one could guess what those things were, but they found out that they could only get closer when the men were in places that were not blocked from electromagnetic waves. Quickly, the army supplied Stephen with a house that was built from walls containing a metal net that didn't allow the thing to track him. The stalker still waited outside of Stephen's house, and whenever he left the house, it kept stalking and getting closer to him. But any time Stephen was home, he was safe. This thing seemed to be some kind of alien, closing in on its target from another, maybe fourth or fifth dimension even. That at least was Brian's own speculation. And since he lived in that house on Road 116, the same cursed house I lived in for a few days, he told me that Stephen had died of a heart attack. The long years with living with the stalker, even though he was partially neutralized, had taken their toll on him. Thing is, once Stephen died, the thing stayed attached to the house and would keep stalking the next person it encounters from the same distance it left Stephen. Now, Brian told me that they were lucky Stephen had managed to crawl out of the house before he died. Otherwise, they would never have been able to get his body out without entering the house. And apparently they knew all this from an investigation of the 5 soldiers that participated in the Area 51 incident. However, he did not know what happened with the other 3 soldiers, nor could he get any information from the army. Now, I talked about trying to contact the military, but he said it would be a bad idea. He put it this way: their only attempt to neutralize that thing was with supplying Stephen with his first safe house, and since it didn't work, they might try more extreme methods. And since none of the other soldiers was ever heard from since the event, it wouldn't be wise of me to contact them. I asked why the army let Stephen just live in a normal town and didn't do something to quarantine the house. He said that Stephen was a special occasion. He had connections to some high-ranked officers and pulled some strings. Now, I still didn't know what to make of Brian's story. It didn't totally add up, but it was the best explanation I had. So, what I have to do now is find myself a house that I can make into my own shelter. Then I would have to work day and night to fortify it with the metal net that would work as a Faraday cage and block the thing from closing in on me. April 10th, 21 feet. I bought a small house in Lakeworth today. I got it because it was far away from the rest of the town. I didn't want other people to have the accident I had. It's located in the woods to the east of town, on 9 Twin Lakes Road. I just took it without even looking inside. I couldn't, of course. Brian told me that everything I was about to do would only work if the stalker never entered my future safe house. Once it set foot there, it was compromised forever. I already got tons of fine aluminum nets. Tomorrow, Brian, Dennis, and I will start working on the house. We will have to cover the thing completely for it to be safe. May 5th, 16 feet. A month has passed since I'd met Brian. A terrible, sleepless month. The stalker was now close enough so that I could see its shadow almost in every closed place. In fact, if I stood at the corner of my motel room and point my flashlight at the farthest corner, I could see the shadow calmly standing there. I moved the bed as close to the center of the room as I could, so that the maximum distance between me and any wall would not be more than 10 feet. You just don't get used to it. By this time, I could only fall asleep by taking sleeping pills. I'm always tired, and I'm always looking around and searching for shadows. But perhaps today it'll be all done. Brian, Dennis, and I worked constantly on the house, applying multiple layers of aluminum nets over the walls, roof, windows, chimney, and any small gap that we could find. We made it as strong as we could to minimize the chances of even the slightest radiation leak. Brian and Dennis constantly checked the house from the inside with the electromagnetic spectrum analyzer, and a few days ago, it finally showed 0 EM transmissions. But to be sure, we kept working on it. This evening I'll test the house. I'll enter it for the first time, and we'll look around with my flashlight to see if the thing is there. Hell yeah. I'm in, and it is out. It worked. The plan worked. Finally, I'm safe. I'm on house arrest, yes, but at least I have something closer to a normal life now. The stalker's still out there. I've already tried illuminating the surroundings of the house with a flashlight, and it was there, just outside the window, standing there, casting a huge shadow on the woods across the road. That bastard. But I closed the curtain on it. I closed all the curtains, and I was safe. Since by now the stalker got pretty close to me, once I opened the door to leave, he could be in the living room immediately because its radius was bigger than the distance of the stalker. So we installed a double-door system, much like a spaceship airlock, in order to create a tiny space where I could enter, close both insulated doors, and then open the inner house door. And that's how my life is going to be from now on. At least I have some friends that could visit me. Dan came a few times since. He was horrified the first time he seen the shadow, but he still kept coming. Brian and Dennis also seemed to get accustomed to the presence of the stalker, as much as one can, but that was pretty much everyone. Still, it's better than nothing. July 12th. I've been living in my little jailhouse for 2 months now. I'm still haunted by nightmares, and I could still see the damn thing through the window every time I use my flashlight or laser pointer, at the closest distance possible to me from the outer side of the house. But it's much better than before. However, a few unanswered questions still bother me though. How exactly did that thing get into Steven's house when he died? If it is alien, why does it cast a person's shadow? And where the hell's the military now? Don't they have some follow-up on this whole story? Why does the stalker crawl faster to me than it did to Steven? Why did the army just leave Steven's house to be and didn't try to quarantine it? And every time I try to question Brian about those things, he answers vaguely, or says that the most important thing is that I'm safe now. However, he brought me a gun. He said that he hopes it doesn't come to this, but just in case I ever need a fast way out. And in that case, he asked me to inform them of my decision and to execute it on the porch of the house. I don't like it. November 12th. By now I got used to ordering everything I needed from stores with deliveries, and I used the double-door system to receive the goods. Lately, my relationship with Brian deteriorated. He was reluctant to answer my questions, and I found the holes in his explanation more and more unsatisfying. I thought a lot about all the unanswered questions I had when I suddenly realized something very disturbing. The house on Road 116 didn't have any mobile reception, which worked great with Brian's explanations. But suddenly, I remember that the old TV set would catch satellite TV, that I could barely hear over the movies I watched via the RCA connector. Steven's old house could not be blocking all EM transmissions, so how could it serve as a safe house? But then, my safe house still works. Something is off. The next time we meet, I'm going to confront Brian about that. December 13th. Today, everything changed. Last week, I invited Brian, Dan, and Dennis to celebrate an early Christmas with me, since none of them wanted to celebrate the real Christmas with a supposedly alien-haunted Faraday cage. After all of us drank some, I started questioning Brian again. As usual, he answered the minimum and avoided the maximum. But then I dropped the satellite TV observation on him, and he got very quiet. He told me that it is now too late for him to hold back the truth anymore. Before, he had to lie to keep me safe, but now there's no choice for him but to tell me the truth, because I was exposing too many holes in his story. And that was even more dangerous. Unfortunately, I now know why. Brian's explanation, apparently, they were all lies. All of them. In fact, Dennis had told him everything he knew about me, and together they tailored a story that I had the biggest chance in believing. And they did all that to protect me. The first thing Brian told me was to remember that this is my safe house, and that it is already proven that my stalker could not enter it. He told me to be very aware of it, and to be sure that it could never change. And then, the really disturbing part came. They had no idea what that stalker was. All they knew is that they couldn't enter a place if the person that was being stalked truly believed it. And I did, until now. But the moment they told me that, I felt my whole world was on the brink of shattering. Stephen got the stalker only a few years ago when he traveled in Ireland and accidentally entered a wrong hotel room where he found a dead body hanging. The police arrived and the whole thing turned out to be a suicide, and thus the stalker was attached to Stephen. There was never an Area 51 event. Stephen was not even in the army. No 5 soldiers, no UFO. Nothing. Brian accidentally found that this creature, or whatever it was, responded to belief. He used it to protect Stephen without telling him. But Stephen found out about it 2 years later. He did not make it long after. 3 months later, Stephen got out onto the porch of the house on 116 and he shot himself in the head. February 15th, 2016. I've been living in this madness for 2 years now. Not writing much, mostly because I'm too concentrated on not vocalizing or giving hold to my fears. I'm doing daily mental exercises to fortify my belief that this thing cannot enter my house. In fact, I know it can't enter my house. It's just that the things can change much more easily than I thought before. If my trust would break, even for once, even for one single moment, that thing will be inside. And then never again will I be able to make a new safe house. I feel like my fears have been accumulating this whole time, and that the bubble will sometime burst. Paradoxically, painting terrifying paintings helps. It's like I'm setting my fears free and letting them go. I'm practicing my mental exercises very hard and all day long, and I'm managing not to think anything that could make me less sure of the safety of my house, but sometimes, like once or twice a week, I feel like I have to let the steam out, so I paint. I usually paint shadows and horrifying shapes and angles, and every time I finish a painting, I throw it in the fireplace and I watch that sucker burn. Gives me a weird and warm, fuzzy feeling. I asked Dennis to put warning signs around the house, just in case I end up like his old man. March 2nd, 2018. I screwed up big time. I cannot believe what happened today. God, please help me. My damn painting. How could I not burn it as usual? I ordered food and the delivery came. Dennis usually helps me, but he couldn't this time, so I used the grocery store's delivery service. A young guy came by with my food bags. The delivery car stood behind him with its headlights facing my way. I let him open the outer door, and I noticed at the last second that the inner one wasn't totally closed. I think I managed to close it a split second before he opened the outer one, but I wasn't sure, and this made me a bit unsure of my safe house. I immediately started my mental exercises, and precisely at that moment, the delivery guy said, "What the hell is that thing behind you?" And in that moment, I knew I was doomed. I felt my eyes open wide and I grabbed my flashlight. I turned around just to discover the guy looking at a huge, horrible painting of a shadowy figure. It was the last painting I made and I didn't burn yet. He was talking about the damn painting. But, you see, in that split second, my belief was broken. As I continued to turn my flashlight around, next to the painting, I saw it. A huge shadow, as if a person was standing just an arm's length away from me. And it was inside the house, closer to me than ever. All of this was a few minutes ago. Or maybe a few hours ago. The thing is standing right behind me. I could feel it. I no longer need to look at it. I could feel it getting closer to me by the second. I can't take it anymore. My spirit is broken. My soul is broken. There is only one more thing that I have to do. Just endure this for a few more minutes. I'm putting a link to my journal entries on the warning signs so that anyone who arrives here could find my story on the internet. And if anyone finds this, please, I do not want you to endure what I have endured. Please, do not enter this house. Do not enter 9 Twin Lakes Road. Goodbye.